something just changed in the Middle East. Not a warning, not a proxy strike, not another headline you scroll past. A direct attack. Israel and the United States hit Iran.
In fact, yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death.
And when that happened, decades of tension finally snapped. But this didn't start this year. It didn't start last year. It started in 1979. Before 1979, Iran wasn't America's enemy. It was one of its closest allies. Iran was ruled by the Shah, a Western-backed monarch who modernized the country, kept oil flowing, and aligned closely with Washington. But inside Iran, anger was building. People saw corruption, they saw inequality, they saw Western influence shaping their country, and then came the revolution. Millions flooded the streets, the Shah fled, and a religious leader named Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile. Iran transformed overnight into the Islamic Republic. And with that transformation came a new doctrine: anti-American, anti-Western, anti-Israel. The United States went from ally to enemy. Israel went from distant state to illegitimate entity in Tehran's eyes. That ideological shift is the root of everything. After the revolution, tensions didn't cool. They calcified. In 1979, Iranian students stormed the U.S. embassy in Tehran. American diplomats were held hostage for 444 days. Trust was gone. In the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, the U.S. sided with Iraq. More resentment, more bitterness. Over time, Iran began building influence not through traditional wars, but through proxy groups. Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, support networks in Syria. Israel saw this as encirclement. To Israel, Iran wasn't just a rival state. It was a strategic architect of long-term pressure. Then came the nuclear issue.
The threats of nuclear weapons is the highest in decades.
Obviously, Iran does have a nuclear program. That isn't secret.
If we didn't hit within 2 weeks, they would have had a nuclear weapon.
They went unchecked by nuclear inspectors.
Our nuclear program is exclusively peaceful.
They still have the capability of doing so should they wish to do so.
Iran insisted its nuclear program was for energy. The U.S. and Israel weren't convinced. To Israel, a nuclear-capable Iran wasn't just a balance shift. It was an existential threat. Israel is geographically small, strategically vulnerable. One miscalculation could mean devastation. In 2015, Iran signed the nuclear deal, the JCPOA, limiting enrichment in exchange for sanctions relief. For a moment, tensions eased. Then in 2018, the United States withdrew from the agreement. Sanctions returned. Iran gradually resumed enrichment activities, and the clock started ticking again.
Monitors, there is actually no sign that it has given any order to turn this nuclear material into a weapon. So it looks like Iran has this enriched uranium as a kind of message, as a sort of, look at us, we are capable of doing this. We're not actually doing it yet, but should we want to do it, we could do it pretty quick. After America pulled out of the nuclear deal that President Obama set up, which actually froze the nuclear program, there was a brief pause while Iran decided what to do next. Then it started reinvigorating the program, reached that 60% level, and then America and Israel decided to try and take it out. They damaged quite badly both of the main enrichment centers, but on the other hand, they didn't manage to destroy the stockpile of enriched uranium Iran already has.
For years, Israel and Iran fought indirectly. Cyber attacks, airstrikes in Syria, assassinations of scientists, missile exchanges through proxies. It was controlled hostility, until it wasn't. Escalations in 2024 and 2025 pushed both sides closer to open confrontation. Missiles were fired directly, drones crossed borders, warnings became threats, and threats became plans. When Israel and the United States struck Iran directly, They framed it as preventive. The official reasoning: Iran's military capabilities were expanding, missile programs were advancing, regional influence was growing, the nuclear threshold was getting closer. From Israel's perspective, waiting was riskier than acting. From the U.S. perspective, protecting regional allies and its own forces became the justification. But beneath the official statements, there's strategic calculus, power balance, deterrence credibility, regional dominance. If Iran crosses certain military thresholds, the equation changes permanently. So the decision was made. Act before that shift becomes irreversible. When the strikes happened, the message was unmistakable. This was not symbolic. It was operational. Military sites were targeted, strategic infrastructure was hit, leadership networks were disrupted, Iran responded, missiles, drones, regional alerts. Airspace closures spread across the Middle East. Oil markets reacted instantly. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage that carries a massive portion of the world's oil, suddenly became a global pressure point. This wasn't just regional tension anymore. It became economic tension, geopolitical tension, global tension.
Multiple things are going on here. The Strait of Hormuz closed. Oil prices soaring. Natural gas from Qatar cooked. The Iranians don't need to win on the ground. They're creating an economic nightmare for the world. The goal isn't to beat the American military. They know they can't. They know they're going to get destroyed. The goal is to hold on and create economic turmoil and pressure the United States and hurt the United States economically. They know militarily they'll never win. So all they have to do is hold on. Destroy America's footprint in the region, destroy their credibility in the region, make other countries not want to host them anymore, remove their footprint in the Middle East, and then hurt them economically in a midterm year.
To understand Israel's posture, you have to understand geography. Israel is small. It does not have strategic depth. It cannot absorb prolonged, high-intensity conflict easily. So its doctrine has long been preemption. If a threat becomes credible enough, strike first. Iran's rhetoric toward Israel has been openly hostile for decades. Add to that missile capability. Add to that regional proxy networks. Add to that nuclear potential. From Israeli leadership's perspective, that combination becomes intolerable. So the calculus becomes simple: neutralize capability early, or face a far more dangerous scenario later. The United States doesn't operate in isolation here. It has troops stationed across the Gulf. It has defense agreements with regional states. It has a strategic alliance with Israel. If Iran retaliates broadly, American forces are automatically involved. So Washington faces a dilemma: stand back and risk escalation anyway, or act decisively alongside Israel to control the escalation. In modern geopolitics, credibility matters. If the U.S. signals hesitation, adversaries take note. So the involvement isn't just about Iran. It's about maintaining deterrence globally. But there's another layer. This conflict is also ideological. The Islamic Republic was built on resistance to Western influence. That narrative has shaped Iranian foreign policy for decades. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Israel operate within a security framework that views Iran's expansion as destabilizing. When two systems define each other as threats for 40 years, confrontation becomes more likely over time. It becomes structural, not accidental. Not every country supports the strikes. Some nations argue that diplomacy was bypassed. Others warn that military action could push Iran further toward nuclear capability instead of away from it. There are fears of wider regional war. There are fears of energy crises. There are fears of new alliances forming. Whenever major powers clash, the ripple effects extend far beyond the battlefield. This isn't just an airstrike. It's the collision of a 1979 revolution, a decades-long rivalry, a nuclear standoff, regional power competition, strategic fear, all converging at once. History doesn't disappear, it accumulates, and sometimes it detonates. There are three realistic paths: escalation, broader regional war; containment, limited but sustained strikes; negotiation, pressure forcing new talks. But here's the truth: once direct military confrontation begins between major regional actors, unpredictability rises sharply. One miscalculation can redraw the map. Why did Israel and the U.S. attack Iran? Because decades of mistrust reached a breaking point. Because nuclear capability changes strategic math. Because deterrence depends on action, because both sides believe waiting would be worse, and because history, when ignored long enough, eventually demands resolution. This isn't a simple story of aggression. It's a long chain of events stretching back to 1979. Revolution, sanctions, proxy wars, nuclear deals, withdrawals, escalations, and now, open confrontation. The Middle East didn't wake up to war overnight. It walked toward it for 47 years. And now, the world is watching to see what happens next.